Hi, my name is Paula Winke, and I'm here to present on transparency in second language testing research. How are we doing? So I've been doing some thinking on the question of what is good research. So when we think of that, we're usually speaking of methodological quality. Good research is carried out according to standards of rigor, appropriate designs, valid measurement instruments, sufficient power, justifiable analyses. This is a traditional perspective. It's fine, but it's incomplete. The current thinking is that results should be reproducible, findings are stable, able to be replicated, and the research itself should be transparent, honest, thorough, and not selectively reporting the procedures, data analysis and results, and materials and data should be available for adoption, inspection, or even reanalysis. In general, proper inference requires full reporting and transparency. There are many different journal articles that have gone over this, and I invite you to review those. Also, just FYI, the National Academy of Science has an open science toolkit that you can download for free. So in this study, I culled 10 checks on transparency in research from these sources, the APA, COPE guidelines, and the Open Science Framework, and also from these two papers, which really helped me a lot. And I and my research assistant, Wenwei Melody Ma, reviewed recent language testing articles against the 10 checks to see if researchers in the field are adhering to them. So these are the 10 checks. I'm going to review them super quick. Report who was involved in your study, who did what. Report the statistical or analysis methods you use, the software or tools you use for the analysis. Publish your data, publish your materials, use active voice and first person in writing. Use a standardized referencing style system, like the APA. Pre-register your study and your analysis plans, and that's to verify whether the research is hypothesis testing or hypothesis generating. Replicate, ensure your study could be replicated. Center diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in your research. And know the problem areas in publishing, things like text recycling, fragmented publication, author non-justification. The idea is to hold yourself above them. So in this study, we culled out 64 research articles published in language testing. They were published between 2019 and 2021, and they were all study types, and we coded for 7 of the 10 items. So Melody did the first round of coding. She discussed the codes and checked difficulties in applying the codes with me. We revised some of the codes or coding procedures and came to consensus on the final coding. So 2 of the items were on honest and thorough reporting. So what we found is more than half, 56% of the studies reported who was involved in the study and described their duties, but 44% did not. And 70% of the studies reported the software or tools they used for the analysis, but 30% did not. 2 of the items were on data and materials transparency. None of the studies that we looked at shared their full data, and none of the studies shared all of their materials, but 3.2% did share the materials through open access sources. Shin and Girl and Latifi and Girl used publicly available essay sets. Item 5 was to use active voice and first person in writing. So why is that important? Active voice creates direct, clear, and concise sentences. It also lets the reader know how the research was done. One of the papers that we saw did this rather well was by ETS researchers on evaluating subscore uses across multiple levels. In general, almost 90% of the studies were using first person at least once and using active voice. And then we did find 11% were not using it. To read more about writing in first person, I encourage you to read The Sense of Style by Steven Pinker or have on your desk Stylish Academic Writing by Helen Sword. Both of those go over the reasonings and justifications for writing in first person. The remaining 5 items included things like using a standardized referencing style system. Everyone was doing that. And pre-register your study or your analysis plan to verify whether the research is hypothesis testing or hypothesis generating. None of the studies so far have done that. I will show you towards the end a good example of clear hypothesis statements. It's provided in McCrae and Brunfault, but still even that study was not pre-registered. Item number 8 is to replicate or ensure your study can be replicated. The 64 studies did not include any replication studies. Centering diversity, equity, and inclusion in your research. Language testing has a virtual special issue with Jamie Schissel and Cameron Kahn, and it focused on language testing papers centering on DEI, but we need more new studies as well that center on DEI. And know the problem areas in publishing, things like text recycling, fragmented publication, and author non-justification. The idea is to hold yourself above them, but first you have to really get into what they are. So text recycling is the overlap of text with an author's own previously published work. This is also called self-plagiarism. But I would like to point out that a thesis that you've had published by a university is actually more like a preprint. It's not peer-reviewed. So you can self-plagiarize text from your dissertation once. It's not considered self-plagiarism, but rather it's the printing of what was a preprint. Fragmented publication is writing 2 or more papers from a single study, also called data fragmentation. It often results in text recycling. Instead, the recommendation is to inform the editor or publisher that the findings are from one project, but reported in 2 or more parts. The study should be submitted, hopefully together, with each article referring to the other, and if it's from a thesis as the base, each article should reference the thesis and the other studies from the same thesis. Author non-justification is when an author who had no primary role in the research is added. So looking ahead, what can we do? We do have a long way to go, but we're getting there. First of all is to practice open science and publish it all. You can get multiple publications out of your single project by, first of all, publishing the data and code book for your article. Make your plans, materials, and data available. Get yourself an ORCID ID, pre-register your research projects, and then also share your data and materials on a public open repository, like Iris and Open Iceberg. Choose repositories that generate a DOI and cite your data and your materials in your study and on your CV. So if you practice open science, you're planning your project openly. So if you pre-register your project plans, also called the research protocol or research proposal, it's helpful to readers. Anyone can do this. It's free and good practice. And when possible, with certain journals, submit your project plan for review. If you obtain an in-principle acceptance, then you self-publish your plan, or the journal will do that for you, and then you collect data and write up your results. Then the paper is reviewed again, hopefully by the same reviewers, and if you follow the published plan, it's published as a registered report. Reviewers cannot be biased against non-significant findings with the registered report. And also p-hacking, authors fishing for significant results or presenting exploratory findings as confirmatory ones is avoided. So this is table 3 from McCrae and Brunfalt. And what this is it is a chart of their hypotheses. This table well outlines the hypotheses that were part of the study. The authors first listed the variables, then how those variables are measured, and also the hypotheses related to those variables. If they had pre-registered their study, this table could have been part of that, just without the results. Then they would collect their data, analyze it, and then actually publish their paper with the results. So again, I remind you to look at these project pre-registrations to get an idea of what these could look like. I also encourage you to read the preprint Promoting Open Science Practices, What Can and Should Graduate Programs Do by Hui and Huntley, that's available on the Open Science Framework. I also hope that you will propose and support field-wide initiatives, but also pay attention to what's going on outside of SLA and language testing. So several journals in the field of SLA and language testing are now promoting open science. We're encouraging pre-registration materials and data publication badges, and we're also accepting registered reports as a submission category. And other journals outside of SLA and language testing are publishing all data, code books, data analysis scripts and codes for software and version control, and publishing brief factual statements of authors' contributions. And also some are publishing reviews so readers can understand how the paper went from the preprint to the peer-reviewed publication, and reviewers' names are published with the reviews to provide credit. I think that there's a lot here to discuss, So I invite you to chime in with your questions or comments.